Hey guys, it's Anthony Bandiero, attorney and senior legal instructor with Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training, bringing you another roadside, not a roadside chat, another webinar. This one is Cow the Bag. This webinar is going to be renamed. Okay, I'm going to rename it. I just sent out an email to my executive staff because I think a lot of people see this, and if they're not familiar with our training, they don't know that this is a phrase for private searches, okay? The private search doctrine, otherwise known as the silver plate doctrine, otherwise known as cat out of the bag. And I think that it keeps some people away because they're like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I don't have any cats. I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person. And they don't attend the webinar. So this is really going to be known moving forward as the private search doctrine, i.e. cat out of the bag. All right. I mentioned this before we started recording, but again, Anthony Bandiero here working for Blue to Gold. Blue to Gold is the largest and the largest search and seizure instructors in the nation. We're very proud of that. We are legal juggernauts, I think, in this space. We just do a lot of this training. We love it. All of our instructors are the best of the best. If they work for Blue to Gold, they are the best of the best. And so yeah, exactly. So glad you guys are here. We are going to give away a gun today. We're going to do one drawing, and you got to be here. So whoever's name is drawn is going to win a firearm, and you do have to be here to win. We'll handle that part, but that's pretty exciting. And so the books, guys, we have the best. And also, Rick is actually bringing up a good point. Not only do you have to be here, Nick, can you update your chat settings? Nick from CHP, and also Mark from Fontana, and Imelda from Tech PD. Please, nobody can see it except me, and I just want everybody to know where you guys are from. So you do have to be a qualifying person, which is basically a current or retired police officer or prosecutor. Well, you have to work for a law enforcement agency because we actually did have a forensic tech. I think that's. I know you're on here. I'm probably not saying that correctly, but somebody who works in the crime lab win at an agency, and that's totally fine. Just you have to work for a police agency or a prosecutor's office. Okay, cool. Okay, so the books are off the hook. Please get the books. We actually have a new book coming out. First of all, we have a dictionary coming out, a law enforcement dictionary, just legal terms, slang, things that, cops hear in the street. And this is going to be great for academies, great for, even veteran officers that may want some, to brush up on their legalese, their Latin and so forth. We also have a book called Simplified Statutes. This book is one of our most ambitious projects where we are going to break down practically every single law in your state that's going to be state specific that you guys enforce, and we're going to break it down in a way that tells you exactly what to articulate, exactly what elements of the crime are in order to win these cases, okay? So it is very ambitious, it's very exciting. The first states coming out is Nevada, Idaho, Texas, and Colorado. Those states are essentially done. We're doing the final touches on them, and I think you guys will be very excited, and we'll move on from there. Afterwards, if you guys have a question for me, I don't know if I have a fellow instructor here. I think everybody's teaching on a Thursday, but if there's any other instructor here that wants to jump on, I don't see anybody here. I know Zach is teaching, John is teaching, and then maybe Mike Boone might be around. Do I see Mike Boone? Okay, so we'll see, but regardless, I will answer questions. All right, disclaimers. You can't be a lawyer without disclaimers. Otherwise, they take your bar license. Laws and agency SOPs may be more restrictive. I teach the Fourth Amendment here just to kind of wet the whistle. But a lot of things I teach are universal. I kind of do that by design, especially with a webinar like this. I don't do very state-specific stuff because that offends other people who are not from that state. So, for example, if New York does something very particular and peculiar, which they do, I generally don't teach that because it's not really universal, right? It's not going to help the cop in Texas. If you have any questions about what you're doing out there, push up the chain. And finally, this is legal education, not legal advice. So our main agenda here is what is privacy under the Fourth Amendment and how can we search an area where a person had privacy, but yet the privacy may be gone, right? That may be gone. Okay, so what is privacy? Privacy comes from a case called Katz versus United States. So what happened here is Charlie Katz um, is a bookie in LA. Okay, now he's a numbers man, and the FBI was going after him for this interstate gambling. Now I got to tell you, like at first I was like, really, 1960s? I mean, you can't do anything better with your life than going after a guy who's just trying to run numbers and allow the dads of the world to bet on the Sunday football game. But then I started researching a little more, and the reason why they were so aggressive against the numbers guys was because they were tied into who? Into what? Right? The syndicate, the mob, right? So exactly. So they were that's so I guess it makes a little bit more sense. They were just trying to pinch, and cause a lot of stress on the mob. So that's kind of, I think, a little bit of the backstory about why they wanted old Charles Katz in the middle of LA. Well, Charles is like a lot of bookies. He has to make his phone calls at 12:30 p.m. on a Sunday. He has a half an hour to get his numbers in before the 1 o'clock game. Okay. So that means that he's predictable. And he always uses the same phone booth that's near his house. He does not do his numbers from from his house, and he's worried because he doesn't want the phone to be traced and calls being recorded and so forth. So he uses a telephone booth down the street from his house at 12:30 p.m. The FBI sees him coming around the corner. They activate a tape recorder that's on top of the phone booth, okay? And then he gets in it, he runs his numbers, and he leaves. They use that one-sided conversation as part of the key piece of evidence that he was a numbers man. So they indict him, they convict him. We're going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And Charlie over here is complaining. He's like, you know what? This offends the Fourth Amendment. And the federal government says, no, it does not, because you don't. This is not a trespass. We never trespassed in that phone booth. All we did is capture sound waves leaving the telephone booth. Okay, so the Supreme Court of the United States, I think rightly, is concerned about this behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, if they allow this to be like not fall under the ambit of the Fourth Amendment, we're going to have a problem here. The problem is that you're not going to have privacy in America, because the reality is this, okay? And they have some foresight here. The reality is that if we allow this invasion of his conversation, and as long as we don't, physically trespass into the protected area, well, privacy is dead in America, okay? Because the U.S. government and the military, for example, have all kinds of gadgets that they do not need to get into your home to know exactly what you're doing there. They have a thermal imaging that's like HD television. They got listening devices that they don't need to enter your home to listen to your conversation, the satellites and so forth. So if we allow this, as long as you don't trespass, then the Fourth Amendment, as far as like the concept of having a private life and the right to be left alone by your government, is dead. And the U.S. Supreme Court is going to put an end to it by having a two-part test. They're going to say, hey, first of all, in order to have privacy, number one, did the suspect expect privacy? Do people expect privacy in their first-class mailing? Do people expect privacy in their UPS packages? Do people expect privacy in a phone booth while they're talking to whoever on the other end, illegal or not? The point is that's not how we do crime control in this country, right? Even though you're engaged in illegal activity, you still can have privacy and rights. Clearly, right? Also, is this something that is society would see as objectively reasonable, right? Objectively reasonable. So you need both. Both are required. So did the suspect expect privacy? Would society consider it reasonable? Both are required. Now, I have lawyers on here, okay? If you're a lawyer, say, yeah, that's me. I'm a lawyer, and if you're a lawyer, be proud of it. But we also know that lawyers like tests, right? They like these tests, and cops don't like tests. They like bright line rules, or they like kind of analogies, okay? Just like cow the bag is an analogy. They like that because sometimes it's like, yeah, I know what you mean. Well, this is the way I look at it, okay? I call this the 100-person test. I want you to imagine that you are going to present your search or seizure scenario to 100 rational people. Now, these 100 people are not all pro-cop, you can't do anything wrong type of people. I got the FOP plate on my car, right? Sticker, gave it to the policeman's ball. But they're also not anti-cop people that you can't do anything right, okay? They're people like, I don't know, like me. that love law enforcement, but also love my freedom. I love the fact that I can be left alone in this country if I'm keeping my chin down and doing the right thing. Okay, my head down and doing the right thing. So, I want you to think like, hey, 100 people. If I listen to your phone call while you're in a phone booth, would that offend you? Most people will be like, absolutely. Most people aren't like, oh, well, I got nothing to hide, so do whatever you want. Okay, I got nothing to hide. Well, no, I'm sorry, I do have something to hide. It's called my privacy, right? So, I'm even though I'm not a criminal. So the point is, that's how rational people think. Now, that's the privacy test, okay? We only have an hour with this webinar. Trust me, I have a whole webinar just on, these kind of issues, right? But, and certainly we go into depth on this in our full day course, Advanced Search and Seizure, and also the traffic stops class. But the point is that that's what we're going to use, that test, this privacy test, old school cats, the telephone booth case. We're going to use that and apply it to some modern situations. Now, the first thing that we got to know, and the baseline here, the private search doctrine, is that the Fourth Amendment does not apply to private searches. Period. Full stop. Okay? No matter how unreasonable their actions are. When James Madison put down the 54 words of the Fourth Amendment on a piece of parchment, his intent was not to restrict or control his brothers and sisters not in government, okay? It was all about government action. So if you don't have government action, you do not have a search under the Fourth Amendment. You might have some other stuff. You may have a crime. You may have a tort liability, but you don't have a Fourth Amendment issue. A good example is going to be the case in Sanders. What happened here is that Sanders he's a beautiful mind, okay? And he counts cards. And he's in Las Vegas and he's counting cards. And I got to tell you, counting cards in Las Vegas is not illegal. It's just frowned upon. I am from Las Vegas, okay? And when I go to Vegas and I see, the Strip and I see all these beautiful casinos, the Aria and the Cosmo, and I think to myself, wow, that is absolutely gorgeous. That's stunning. It's really, really nice in there. And I think, man, that place was built by losers. You know what I'm saying? You cannot have that kind of casino, a $6 billion casino project built off winners. So Vegas, sorry if you still live there, but it's a city built on losers. So he goes there and he's counting cards. They know it. He's winning. They want him out. So they're going to trespass him. So they bring him down to the security office and they're going to trespass him. And while one is doing the trespass, right, Daniel? While one is, one's given the trespass order, another one is searching him. Searching him for what? There's no evidence of counting cards. It's all in his brain. What are you going to seize his brain? And they look into his pockets, they look into his backpack, and they find cocaine. They then summon local law enforcement, and they charge him accordingly. Are we good? Y or N? Yes or no? Are we good? Can we use this cocaine evidence against him, even though the security was unlawfully per se in his pockets? Okay, the answer is yes, right? Okay. Now let's look at U.S. versus Bowers. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, if Sanders has a problem of how he was treated, should he complain to Metro, Las Vegas Metro, or should he complain to the security guards, right? Complain to security. Now we have Bowers. What happened here is this. Roommates went through the defendant's photo album and found child pornography, and then summoned the police who also viewed the item. Now we're starting, Better Business Bureau, that's actually pretty funny. Now we're starting to see some of this private search doctrine come out, right? Because, the court is going to ask you potentially, your boss and the prosecutor, like, why are you searching this defendant's photo album? You don't have a right to do that. Well, at the end of the day, who is the one that helped eliminate the privacy interest? It wasn't the police. It was the roommates, okay? They're the ones that went into to their roommate's room and started snooping around. And now we have to talk about how do we handle that, right? Well, let's talk about government agents, okay? When does a search become a government search? Well, you have to have two things, right? In order to have a government search. Number one is that you have to actually do something affirmative to to get to for the search to occur, right? You have to like tell people to do something. You have to participate in it. I will just basically at the end of the day, um, encouraging community involvement is not a government search, right? So when we have like see something, say something, posters, all around town at the transportation hubs and so forth. Those are not, you're not converting a person who reads that poster into a government agent. You need something way more affirmative and direct to a particular person. But also, you'll see this come up in some of the cases. You also need a person acting on behalf of the police, right? They have to be doing it for you. In other words, the court will sometimes ask, hey, would this search have happened regardless, right? Even if you told them, hey, go in your roommate's room and go tell me what you see in the closet, right? That's a problem. But if the roommate was going to do it anyway, like they were like, nope, I was going to do it, um, then that could be a factor saying that they actually weren't a government agent, right? Now, somebody says, what if the roommate are off-duty police? Does that change anything? It changes a lot, actually. So normally, off-duty police officers that are totally motivated to do their own thing, right, their own searches for their own personal reasons, are not conducting Fourth Amendment searches. I'll give you an example that what happened here is as an officer thought his wife was cheating on him, probably with a firefighter. So he's really upset, and so he goes into this guy's backyard and he's like snooping in his backyard, looking in his windows and looking to see if his wife is in the house. Um, well, is that a Fourth Amendment search, right? The answer is the answer is no, right? Because he's doing it for his own personal reasons, right? Okay. So that was, if a cop did that, if a cop was in a backyard looking in windows, that could be obviously a search, but this off-duty cop was doing it for his own personal reasons. Okay, police officers should not direct private people to do things that the officer cannot do, right? The officer cannot do. All right. Now, a search occurred, let's go through some summary cases, right? A search occurred where a detective requested a motel manager to seize certain items in a motel room. Well, that's a 1965 case. That just tells us that this has been the rule for a very, very long time, right? So you can't tell people to do stuff that you can't do. You couldn't just go into that guy's hotel room and start snooping around and grabbing stuff unless you had some other justification. What happened in Hardin was an officer asked a landlord to go into a tenant's apartment to see if he was actually in there. And then they were going to go from there, right? So again, you couldn't just walk into that guy's apartment and see if he was there. Now, if you had an arrest warrant and you had reason to believe that he was home first, maybe you could do it, right? Maybe you could do it, but not generally speaking. You would not have the authority to just see if people are home. In the case of the off-duty officer searching his wife's items, does marital property come into play? Well, unless the firefighter is now the wife's items, which could be the case. I mean, if you want to get down to brass tacks on that, I could probably make that argument. That is not what happened in that case, right? But it's actually a good example of, joking aside, that if you are searching, you know, something that you have common authority over, it's not a government search, right? You're personally motivated. You're personally motivated. All right. State versus Tucker. What happened? This is an Oregon case. I think that does kind of play a part here. But what happened here is that a search occurred where an officer asked a tow truck driver to search an arrestee's impounded vehicle at the tow yard. Now, just thank you for that information, Joe. That's good to know. I wouldn't put it past my wife, though, just so you know. Now, this could be upheld if the officer was allowed to do the same search, right? Then you're making the tow truck driver a agent. But here, in this Oregon case, they found that it actually was not a proper search, right? The government did not have the authority to search. Okay. Hold on one second. Just one second here. Sorry. Okay. Rick, just making a note there. Okay. Now, a search occurred where police provided false information to. Okay, this is actually you cannot make this shit up. Okay, a search occurred where police provided false information to medical personnel to induce them to perform an invasive search of the person's rectum. Okay, for narcotics. You cannot make this stuff up. Okay. How they thought that this would actually be lawful is beyond me, right? But maybe they thought they were being cute with the, with the rules and so forth. That hey, I'm not doing it; they're doing it. But hey, he may have some drugs in there, and maybe you should, he might, whatever they're telling these guys. I don't know. U.S. versus Reed. Now this one it gets a little more tricky, right? What happened here was police were present while a hotel employee searched a hotel room, and police agreed to be a lookout during the search. Right? Do you see what's going on here? They are basically participating in the search, right? They're providing cover, protection. They are converting what would otherwise be a private search into a government search. So this does happen, though, by the way. I've seen this happen where cops kind of, like it can happen on civil standbys, right? Hey, I'm just here to keep the peace. Just remember, though, that there is an argument that if you're just there, even if you're there just to keep the peace, that you could be converting that situation into a government action, right? How many times, right, have you guys been on a civil standby and you're like, hey, I'm here to keep the peace, but I'm not going to allow property that seems to be contested to leave the property, right? You guys, it stays here. You guys can contest that in court because the reason why you're doing that is because at least there's some intuition here that you don't want to be the muscle that says, hey, now she gets the TV, but you find out later it was his TV. Hey, he gets the Xbox, but she wants the Xbox. You guys, Gerald, domestic escorts means various things depending on where you are. In Vegas, that means a certain thing. But, you don't want to convert this into a government seizure of property. That's why, now look, if it's her ID, if it's her purse, you're probably going to be like, no, she gets to take her damn purse, right? Something like that. But you get my point. So that's what's kind of going on here. Now, this one is also a little tricky, okay? Here's what happened. An officer working overtime at a nightclub ordered a patron to keep his hands up while a security guard patted him down and found drugs. Okay. Do you guys see what's going on here? So the security guard, the cop is there, this is very, very common. Okay. Very, very common. You're there, you're hired, you may be paid directly or you're through your agency, whatever your agency rules are. And you're in uniform, you are a police officer, and security has this policy to pat people down. But that's their policy, right? To get into the club, they are patting people down, right? And the cop says, "Hey, no, you gotta cooperate here. You gotta put your hands up," type deal. What's the problem here, right? Do you guys see an issue here? All right. You'll get a recording, though. No matter what, you'll get a recording. Right. Right. It becomes a government search, right? And how many cops would have done the exact same thing because they feel like they're trying to help the security guard, right? Because can the security guard pat this person down? They can do whatever they want. It's not our problem, right? It's not our problem. We're not there to control security guards. That's a business relationship. But the court found that the pat-down was a joint venture between private security and law enforcement and violated the Fourth Amendment. Why? Because they don't have, the police officer does not have the authority independently to pat this guy down. He wasn't seen concealing a gun and armed and dangerous and in criminal activity. He was just trying to get into a nightclub. Okay. Now, if the court does find that the private person would have done the same search regardless without police direction, the evidence may come in. However, okay, that is true. Okay, that is true. And and if you're a prosecutor, a defense attorney, right, you can try to make that argument. However, I will tell you in my experience, in my, case law research and so forth, I really believe that the judges mostly focus on what the cop did, not what the motivation was of the private person. Okay, so Gerald says he's playing devil's advocate. He says, could it be argued that it was a consent search since the patron the patron allowed it in order to actually enter the club? Absolutely, you can argue that, right? 100%. But the problem here is that the court found that this was not consent. This was an order and a submission to authority, right? Yeah, and Aaron kind of brought that up. Okay. Police asked a hotel housekeeper to separate defendant's trash from other hotel rooms. Now, this was no search. Why? Because it would have been removed anyway, right? So, was she an agent? No. Because in order to have an agent, well, you can, okay, fine. I'm sorry. No, she would be an agent. She would be an agent. But it still would not be unlawful because it would happen regardless, right? It doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. Now, when police ask private parties to do something that they would likely not have done, except for investigative purposes, a search has likely occurred, okay? So that is very, very key here. So let me just give you an example. It's one thing to tell a housekeeper, hey, next time you're in room 101, can you look around, let's say you're there lawfully, right? Can you look around and tell me what you see? And they go in there the next morning to clean the room, and they see drugs in plain view. They call you, you put those observations in a search warrant. That is likely going to come in. Why? Because as long as the hotel person, the housekeeper, was going to be there regardless. But if the housekeeper was also encouraged by you to not only look around but look in drawers, and he or she opened up a drawer and saw drugs in plain view, that's not coming in because the housekeeper would not have done that but for your unlawful instigation to do that. A dog alerted on a UPS package and the police encouraged UPS to open it. Despite the fact that UPS could have opened the package independently, this was a government search. This Bruce case is exactly what I am talking about. Yeah, UPS can do whatever they want. But once you start encouraging them to do something that they would not normally do, it becomes a search, okay? The Fourth Amendment also applies if the private person tells the cops to search. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? But don't think of it like, well, okay, yeah, if I tell them to search, but if they tell me to search, then I'm a private person. So that's not going to work, okay? You'd have to ask yourself, hey, do I have a lawful reason? I'm sorry. Would this comply with the Fourth Amendment, right? If I did it, even at their behest, would this still comply with the Fourth Amendment? Okay, this Adams case. Okay, let me just give you a little bit of background here. So, Adams is he's a real bad. He got into a shooting with some police officers in New York. Okay, at the housing projects, and he shot multiple times at police officers. They strike him, but they don't mortally wound him. He actually escapes, and a girl comes up and says, "Hey, I'm his girlfriend, right? I'm his girlfriend," and he has, she's like shocked as like everybody else, right? And she's like, he has more guns and he has more, ammunition and so forth in his closet. So they go into the apartment with her consent. They, they find, evidence of more guns, ammunition that's tied to him, that was used in the gun that they used in the shooting. But come to find out, she actually wasn't living at the apartment. She was just a girlfriend. But the police reasonably believed that she was, right? That she was a tenant. Exactly, Kyle. This is called apparent authority. Now, this case was in 1981. The whole apparent authority case under Illinois versus Rodriguez did not come out until many years later. But the point was that because they reasonably thought that she had authority over the closet, that evidence was going to come in. So it's not because, as they actually tried to argue, well, Your Honor, we're just listening. No, they're telling us to do it. It's purely a private search. No, it's because they believe that she could do it. Okay. In essence, the police became the agent of the private person. The question now is whether the private person has the authority to do what the police did. You guys with me on this, right? So if they can do it legally without violating people's privacy and so forth, then you can do it. Let's do a quick commercial break, okay? And by the way, this is one of the cutest things that I think our team, our marketing team, has done. I just love this. This is pure genius over here. I can't get enough of that little commercial break animation. So, guys, here's our next webinars. Probably. Next week we have Miranda and Beyond with Zach Miller. Fantastic webinar. Zach really, really, really knows his stuff with Miranda. In fact, I learned something new the other day that I was not teaching correctly, and Zach, gave me some information on it. I think that's fantastic because, guys, I am just like you. I'm always learning. Okay, I know a lot, but I certainly do not know everything. All About Abandonment is the next Wednesday after that. That's going to be a really good case. And we're going to talk about search warrants and confidential informants on August 6th. So we have a lot going on around here. No matter what, just join and sign up for the webinars, because even if you cannot attend in person, we are always giving you the links to these webinars. You can share them. You can actually embed them in agency training. We have no restriction on that whatsoever. Hey, if you can monetize this, if you can, make money off this mug, do that too, right? All we care about is training police officers, period. That's our end goal here. So if you want to help us, please do. Now let's talk about these cat of the bag searches. We've actually done a lot of heavy lifting so far. We've actually done some pretty good work if you think about it. We've talked about what is privacy under the Fourth Amendment. We have a good idea about what that is, right? The telephone booth case. We understand when a person becomes your agent. We understand that we can become the agent of private people if they are lawfully allowed to do the same thing that we can do, right? Now let's talk about this cat of the bag search. This is a different twist on what we've been talking about. Here's what's going on. What happened here is that this is one of my favorite animations, by the way. I just absolutely love the mustache on this dude. Like, this is a definitely classic early 80s mustache, making a comeback, right? Making a comeback. Plus the mullet. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I've been traveling the country, and the mullet has also been making a comeback. So life is truly goes around in circles. Okay. All right, but I do digress. Okay. So what happened here is Jacobson is a drug trafficker, and he traffics his narcotics through FedEx. Common, it happens, and the FedEx, through their own negligence, damages the package. They open the package to find out what they damaged, okay? Now, do we care about why they opened the package? No, we do not. That's not our issue. I'm just telling you why they did it, okay? Because they damaged it. They want to see what kind of, they're trying to see what kind of, damages they're going to have to pay, right? If they broke something valuable, they're going to have to pay for it. If it's just some paperwork, that's going to be a little cheaper probably. So they open it up and they find a tube with some like a cardboard tube with the end caps on it. And they open that up. They find 4 bags of white powdery substance. They then they put it all back together. They call their friends at the DEA, and the DEA arrives, okay? And they open up the package. They search it, essentially. That's what, that's the argument. They search it. And they see the white powdery substance, but they did do something that FedEx did not do. They conducted a field test kit, right? Like a NIC test, old school 1980s NIC test kit, and determined that, yes, it was presumptively positive for a cocaine base. Now, I'm a connoisseur of, how police act, right? Their culture today and how they were in the 60s and 70s and so forth and 80s. And I got to tell you, when I read that the DEA did an early 80s field test kit for cocaine, I said, oh man, I know that test. I've seen that before. And it was like, I imagine the cop just like this went like this, that's some good China white, right? And so they did that, and They, the rest is history, like kind of controlled delivery. Look, Gerald predicted exactly what I was going to do. And by the way, I was actually in Idaho many, many years ago, and I said that dumb joke there. And some cop in the back, I remember like it was yesterday, he said in an excited utterance, and I quote, "I remember those days." And I was dying laughing. I was like, then people were like, did you put that in your background form? And I was like, shh, this is Idaho, right? You can't get away with stuff like that. So they do a controlled delivery or whatever they're going to do. The rest is history. We are going to the United States Supreme Court. And what is the argument? What's the argument here? The argument is, hey, I'm not here to complain about FedEx. I know the Fourth One doesn't apply to them. I'm here to complain about how the DA treated my package. And when they open up that box, that was a search under the Fourth Amendment and so forth. And the U.S. Supreme Court says, no, it was not. Can you believe this? They said it was not even a search at all. Why? Because the cat is out of the bag. Now, that's not what they didn't use those words. I use those words, right? Cat out of the bag means the jig is up. People know what time it is. People know what's going on around here, okay? No need to keep running. No keep hiding. We know what's in that box. Cocaine. And they said, okay, so then Jacobson was like, well, they exceeded the private search by testing it, right? By testing it. And the U.S. Supreme Court says, okay, that may be true. That may be true, but here's how we're going to address that. That is still going to come in under one of two doctrines. Either one, yes, it is a search, but it is de minimis. It is minimal. I call this the spilled milk theory. Do not cry over spilled milk, okay? It is what it is. Just move on. Sometimes a search or seizure occurs in a very technical sense, but it's too de minimis to complain in a federal court of law. We don't got time for that. Or alternatively, number two, once the DEA knew that it was contraband, they can see that it's cocaine, you have no privacy interest at all. So boom, it's contraband. You shouldn't even possess in the first place type deal. Now you don't have any rights at all to it, so we can do whatever we want to the cocaine. Either way, Jacobson's going to lose both arguments, the search of the box and a testing of the narcotics. Okay, again, this is the cat out of the bag mentality, okay? Once it's been out of the bag, you can't put it back in, okay? Try putting a cat back into the bag, okay? It does not work, okay? It'll claw its way out. You already know it's in the bag. Now, this is also known as the silver platter, I said silver plate, but silver platter doctrine. It's as if the private conduct, the private search, which they can do under their own, the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply, has basically handed you evidence on a silver platter. Okay. All right. Now, there's two major restrictions, okay? Number one, you have to replicate the search. Generally speaking, what I teach here, you cannot exceed the search by 1 inch. It's a replication search, but we're going to talk about there's also a little bigger room in that too, right? Because you're here at Blue to Gold, we teach you at these webinars, we do a little bit of a deep dive. We're going to get into the weeds. But also, importantly, you have to have lawful access, right? These searches, generally speaking, only work out when people bring you the container. FedEx brings you the box. The roommates bring you the photo album, right? If they don't bring it to you in that item, that container, is still in another protected area, that can become an issue. Enter this one. Okay. Shaw. Now, what's funny about this case, you notice probably immediately that this is not an AI pick, and it will never be an AI pick. Why? Because this is the actual hotel involved in the case. And Shaw is a meth head, and she is staying at the Crystal Inn. And I got to tell you, it's like moths to a flame. This is pure marketing genius. If you want to put the Motel 6 out of business, open up a Crystal Inn right next door. Exactly, Tom. So Shaw, calls the front desk and complains about bed bugs. And she the manager kind of like gets this message, oh, there's bed bug issues in room 101. And by the time that the manager kind of gets over to the room, knocks on the door, Shaw is not in the room. Okay. Now the room is still being rented by Shaw, but she's out there doing, I like to say like doing some errands, right? She's like, probably at the family dollar store buying some makeup or something like that, right? And she is gone, but the manager then enters the room with her pass key, looks around for the bed bugs, maybe sees them, maybe doesn't, I don't know. But one thing she does see in plain view is a lot of narcotics. She then leaves. She calls her local police department. They arrive. They're told what was inside the room. And the manager says, I'll show you drugs inside the room. You can look around here, right? So the cop then the manager reopens the door, goes inside the room, and the cops follow in the room. Okay. For those who are watching on demand, there is a chat going on, which is, you can probably tell I've been looking at this, but there's my cops are very funny. They make very witty jokes, and it's good for keep this live because nobody, including me, wants to go to a boring legal training class where nobody laughs and has fun. So regardless of that, they go into the room, with the manager's permission. They look around. They not only see, the drug evidence, but they also see evidence of a drug trafficking operation. Shaw is arrested along with 5 of her accomplices. It ends up being like a pretty large, relatively large drug trafficking operation, and we go to court. Do you think that cat out of the bag? Do you think that Jacobson, the silver platter doctrine, whatever you want to call it, do you think that will apply here? Yes or no? Do you think cat out of the bag will apply here? Yes or no? Y or N? Okay, we have a lot of Y's, a lot of yeses. Okay. All right. And some people are saying no, including Brandon. But Brandon, would you say Gerald? Let me see if you're right or wrong. Oh boy. This ain't gonna be good news for you, Gerald. I'm sorry, but the answer is going to be no. Here's the problem. The problem is this. The problem is that you need lawful access, right? Exactly, John. You need lawful access to the container. Remember, all these cases have all been, hey, I'm bringing you a backpack. I'm bringing you a hard drive. I'm bringing you a child, a photo album. But this room is still protected by the Fourth Amendment, and you don't have another exception to go into that room in order to search. A landlord may tell the police about contraband he or she has observed, and the police in turn can use that information to apply for a search warrant. But that course of events does not create an exception to the warrant requirement, stressing that the United States Supreme Court had never extended the doctrine, Jacobson, to home searches, right? This is a quasi-home. This is transient lodging. And we likewise declined to expand the doctrine in that way. Now, okay, if Shaw was lawfully evicted first, that could change the facts, right? I'm not going to get into that. That's getting to the weeds right now. But if she was lawfully evicted first, that would change the facts, so you would lose your expectation of privacy. However, you can't call this consent, okay? Because landlords cannot give police consent to enter a room to search for narcotics, right? Also, some cops say, but Anthony, we can search for bed bugs. All I got to tell you is that if you are in a room and you're going to, say to the court, Your Honor, I was there helping the landlord look for bed bugs. You are bringing community policing to a whole new level, okay? And I want to live in your community, because if you're looking for bed bugs, you're also probably changing tires. You're probably also filling up gas at the gas station. You're also washing windshields. You are legit. And that's what I want. I want to live in that kind of community, okay? Because right now, my cops don't do anything for me like that, okay? They're not going to do anything that nice for me, okay? And so the point is, that is not going to work, okay? Now, one little thing that I will tell you is there was ultimately 4 people convicted in that case. Because 4 out of the 6 people involved in that case were not staying in the room. You guys with me on this? So there is no fruit of the poisonous tree as to them. They don't own the tree. They cannot complain about the fruit. In other words, they lack what's called standing under the Fourth Amendment. However, can we agree? Can we agree that may be a good day for law enforcement, but not a great day? Because 2 people in that scenario, Shaw and her boyfriend, who were staying at the room, their rights were violated, and they walked on a pretty large case. Is that a great day for law enforcement? No, it is not. Can they sue law enforcement? Yes, they can. So I want to send everybody to prison. I want everybody to go. I want everybody to get convicted, not just, some people. Okay. A manager of a store facility entered defendant's unit to discover evidence of a bank robbery. Police were called and saw the evidence, but also viewed film and took some fingerprints. Viewing the evidence was not a search, but viewing the film and taking fingerprints was an illegal search. They expanded the scope of the search, right? Now, the answer is maybe, Bernie. The answer is yes. Hey, what's up, Bernie? It's good to hear. It's good to see you, man. See you, hear from you, right? So this case involves a guy named Heibel. Heibel is going back to this, right? Heibel is molesting his girlfriend's daughter. Okay, and there's evidence on this on the phone. Now, by the time the cops arrive, Heibel's gone. Okay, but the girlfriend, who does not live there, right? But she's just visiting. But she knows the evidence is on the phone because she saw it. When he left, he actually put his phone underneath his seat in his car, and then he fled on foot. The girlfriend told the cops, well, they asked, hey, do you have the phone? And she's like, no, I don't have the phone, but I know where it is. I saw him put it under his seat before you guys arrived. She then goes over to his car and opens up his car door. She does not have common authority over her car. That's over his car. That's important for you guys to know, okay? And so she grabs the phone, and then we go from there. At this point, is she a government agent, yes or no? Is she a government agent, yes or no? Okay. The answer is no. Okay, good. All right, now let's continue with the case. Then she unlocks the phone, and she's looking for the pictures in the videos. The cop does not stop her. But look, at the end of the day, this is not, right? She's not a government agent. Okay. She then says to the cop, hey, I can't find them, the pictures. They're buried deep somewhere. I don't know how I don't know, because she was actually messing with this phone before. I don't know how I found them, but here's the phone. The cop then starts looking for the pictures. Are we good under cat out of the bag? Jacobson, Y or N? Okay. The answer is no. The answer is no. Do you guys know why, though? Why aren't we good here? Why does this not comply with Jacobson? What's the problem here? We have the container. We got the phone in our hands lawfully. Because she has no authority to consent. That's correct. Because okay. The problem is we don't know how she found the pictures. There's no way to replicate something when you don't know what they did. Is that what you guys are saying? Shay and so forth, right? You don't know how to replicate the search. You don't know if this was on Facebook Messenger. You don't know if this was on, whatever, Snapchat, whatever, right? You don't know. So now you're rummaging around, and that's not going to work. So, all right. So here is a case where employees found videos of women going to the bathroom on a USB drive that was possessed by the manager of the restaurant. So they looked at it, they saw it, they took it then to the local police department. They told the cop exactly, hey, look, there's videos of women going to the bathroom on this USB drive type deal. And the officer, maybe not recommended, but the officer then inserted the USB drive into the computer, his forensic computer, and actually viewed the videos. Okay. Based on what I have told you, can this evidence come in still? Yes. In other words, no, that's not the question. Did the officer comply with Jacobson? Yes or no? Did the officer comply with Jacobson? Yes or no? Okay. And the answer is going to be yes, right? Okay. The answer is yes. Same thing with here. Now, there's child porn on this hard drive. I think that this is actually was like the wife or something like that, right? And Dave is correct. They replicated the search. Okay. Now, this one, let's see if I have a quote in this case, right? When a private party provides police with evidence obtained in the course of a private search, the police need not avert their eyes. Rather, the question becomes whether the police subsequently exceed the scope of the private search. Now, if if the if the person giving you the hard drive is the wife, not only can you argue Jacobson, right, the silver platter doctrine, can you also argue consent? Would the wife most likely have the authority to give consent to search her husband's hard drive? Probably. I mean, you have to look at common authority, but the answer is most likely. They most likely have that consent. Not always. And Gerald says whether she has authority. Correct. She may not. In some cases, she may not. Now, can we also agree that searching digital devices under this doctrine should be discouraged and used as a failsafe? We do not want to encourage our officers. I got to tell you, I don't really mind when we do this for the backpacks. I don't really mind it when we do it for, the FedEx package. I don't like, that's fine, right? It's really easy. The law's pretty clear. But I don't like doing it for these very, very, these digital cases, because they're going to make a lot of arguments that are, that they're persuasive. There's a lot of private information on these digital devices. So the better approach is common authority. Maybe the wife or something like that can give authority, consent, right? Or a search warrant. Probably never going to be exigency in these cases, but here is a real life example of what I'm talking about. This guy leaves behind a phone at a Hy-Vee. Okay, this is like a Fred Meyers or an HEB in Texas. Okay. So, all right. So he leaves behind his phone, and a employee at the Hy-Vee opens up the phone. Okay, like unlocks it to see, I guess maybe to see whose phone it is, and sees that there's child pornography on the home screen. Right, like a picture of child pornography on the home screen. Calls the police. The police then, the cop who arrives, right, swipes up and unlocks the phone and sees the same picture. Should the detective have done that? No. I mean, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done that, right? But can we save it with cat out of the bag? Yes or no? And the answer is yes, right? The answer is yes. Now, let's talk about substantial certainty, all right? Substantial certainty. What happens if the police did look at, let's go back to the photo album case. Let's say that the cop looks at, he flips through these pictures and sees something that the original people, roommates, did not see. Let's imagine that that a computer, like the Geek Squad, right? Let's imagine that they're repairing a computer and they see child pornography in a folder. And the cops are called and they scroll down and see even more CSAM, sexual assault, material, right? Child sexual assault material. Let's see that they say that they saw something, and the computer tech is like, no, I did not see above the fold or below the fold. I just saw the first row of pictures, Your Honor, and once I saw that, I was so freaked out, I called the police. But the cop used the mouse and scrolled on the wheel, and he sees, 50 other photos of kids being abused. That will come in. That will come in under a ancillary doctrine called substantial certainty test. In other words, Can we be substantially certain, not absolutely certain, but substantially certain that all of the photos, videos in that folder are going to be contraband? The answer is yes, right? It's almost going to be never that you're going to find child pornography and family photos in the same in the same folder, right? These people do not operate like that. So, um, that's actually pretty funny. So let's go through a few cases here, right? A mother found child pornography on a digital device and gave it to police. The police then searched the same device and viewed images that were not viewed by the mother. This was not a Fourth Amendment search because police were substantially certain what the other images were going to be, right? Okay. An ex-girlfriend entered ex-boyfriend's house and took several discs. She searched one of them and found child pornography and handed all of them to the police. The police then searched all of the discs and found more child pornography. What do you guys think about this? Yes, we're good. No, we're bad. Y or N? Okay. All right, good. This is not good. This is not good, right? There was no substantial certainty the other disc contained child pornography and that the evidence was suppressed, right? Yes, he still got convicted. But this is not. Now, let me tell you, let me give you another example. I should really put this case in here. But, you know, before even, Teresa, can you put the links in there too? All right. For social media. But look, before I continue, let me tell you this one case. So what happened here is like FedEx, maybe UPS, but FedEx was mailing some packages, right? And they opened up one of the boxes, okay? And it had like, I don't know, marijuana inside, right? So the box is kind of decently sized, had a sender, a destination, all the box. Now, along with it were like 4 or 5 other boxes, all the same size, all the same weight, all the same sender and receiver. When the DA arrived, they opened up all the other boxes and they found more marijuana. Will substantial certainty bring in all the evidence? Yes or no? Okay. And the answer is yes. Good. The answer is yes. Right? Yep. Okay, good. Okay. Now, I had Teresa put in there the links for social media. Guys, Teresa, her team, Rick, his team, my team, we all work very hard to to bring you guys content like this. I think you can agree that, I hope you agree. I hope you agree that this is some of the best search and seizure training out there. I mean, who's doing this? Who has been doing free training for 5 years, almost every single week? What other company does this? Nobody. Okay. So all I'm asking you though is to do this, right? I appreciate that, Joe. That's awesome. Can you guys do me a solid? Can you spread the word? Can you share with your friends to get more? We're very niche over here. So I'm not looking, I don't need any of this, but to need like 1 million, followers. That's not who I am. I'm not, trying to get the cringe stuff, right? Where people just can't stop watching it. I'm trying to help cops make good case law. So all I'm going to ask you is please, look at those YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and, what was that? OnlyFans. Just please follow us, all right? And spread the word. Okay. So here's some major takeaways. Sean has definitely been a long-time listener. And he still needs a lot of training. That tells me something. Okay. I can't fix Sean. I told Sean, you don't need 1 time a week. You need twice a week. Okay. But yeah, he's becoming the boss over there at his agency. I'm just messing. Sean's my buddy. So, he's definitely my buddy. So we have broken bread together. How many times can we say that with a lot of our followers here? Sean, we have literally broken bread together at a restaurant in Chicago. So, all right. Private searches are not Fourth Amendment searches, okay? It is what it is. They can do whatever they want. That's that casino case, right? Do not exceed the private search, but you do have that substantial certainty doctrine that will help you. But generally speaking, you do not want to exceed the private search. And you also have to have lawful access. And finally, I think we all can agree to get a warrant for your big cases. Guys, before we give away our gun to whoever is the person who's hopefully present, please share with your friends, but invite us out. Do you want to bring us out? We are actually building our 2020, we have some spots open for 2025. So if you want to bring out Blue to Gold, especially for closed training where you want us to train your whole agency, that's really kind of like the model we're moving towards. We have a lot of open training, but we just want to send in our instructors and just train the whole damn place, get them all ready to go, court ready, give them confidence, give them proactive. So if you guys want to bring us in, reach out to us at training@bluetogold.com. I repeat, training@bluetogold.com.